Today we are continuing to discuss and discover this word haskafia, which we're translating as impulse control. So I want to connect that with somatic experiencing. So with somatic experiencing, really the idea is that I don't want to be acting out of impulse, because then I'm just reacting to my life. But how do I not do that? How do I actually create that pause in my life? And so the idea is that what happens is that first I feel the sensation, and the sensation is I need to say this thing right now. Or I need to run away right now. Or I need to eat this thing right now. Or I need to scroll on my phone right now. Whatever it is, I need that now. Really, I don't need that thing as much as I need to deal with the sensation. And so if I'm able to be calm and witness the sensation wholeheartedly, meaning not judging it, not psychoanalyzing it, just really being present to the somatic sensation that's happening within my body, then I can become aware of it. And once I'm aware of it, it no longer has control over me. Meaning, the moment I acknowledge it and am aware of it and witness it, I'm not it. I might feel like I am that impulse until I acknowledge, wow, it's not all of me. It's just my shoulders are feeling really twisting right now. And therefore, I'm thinking that like saying this thing right now or taking this action is going to soothe that. But in truth, no. It's by actually becoming aware of that sensation and not actually trying to soothe it, but just by being aware of it and pressing the pause button instead of acting, or rather reacting, just being present to the sensations. And what happens is after, maybe a minute, those sensations dissipate, or they change, or they shift, or even if they're just as intense, I now have the room, the human freedom to choose how I want to act. And so haskafia, this impulse control, is teaching us to press that pause button, really check in what's going on with my sensations. Because otherwise, if I'm just acting out of those sensations are running me. My impulse is running me. And I want to have the full human experience of free will, of being able to actually pause. Meaning there's not really an issue necessarily with scrolling on my phone or eating that cookie. But if I'm using those things to self-soothe, that's the issue. And so with haskafia, what I'm doing is I'm pausing, checking in with myself, and then I can go and scroll, or I could go and eat that cookie, or do whatever it is, but it's not coming from just being driven by those impulses. Now, one of the things Chase Talbot explains is that addiction, one thing to the other, isn't that different. I mean, my addiction to my iPhone isn't actually that different from addiction to a hard drug or substance abuse. Now, why isn't it? They seem drastically different. It's because what's happening is that I think the issue is that I'm on my phone too much. That's not the issue. Or that person's doing this drug. Like, that's actually not the issue. That's the solution. The problem is that I'm feeling sensations that I don't know what to do with, and there's this pain, and I don't know what to do with it. And so the solution is whatever I fill it with. And that's why addicts, even when they're no longer chemically dependent, they'll go back and they'll relapse. It's like, what happened? Because that their substance of choice wasn't the problem, it was the solution. And without that solution, they're left empty. And so what we can do through just noticing our sensations rather than running from them, rather than doing anything in the world rather than feel them, is just feel them. And actually, it's not that scary, and we actually won't die by feeling our sensations, which is pretty amazing to know. And so just by feeling the sensation, therefore I'm no longer the sensation, and therefore I don't need to fill that void with something instantaneously. And so what we're actually doing with that void is we're filling it with God. Meaning when I have that moment of presence and pause just to witness my own sensations, I'm making room for Hashem to enter that moment, for this to be a godly moment. I'm not saying you're starting to pray, Hashem help me. That's what I'm talking about. I'm saying just in the act of haskafia, of that pause, that itself, we're learning Tanya, is a divine act. We're learning Kaddish atzmecha b'muter lach. Sanctify yourself in what's permissible. It's not necessarily that the thing's bad that I'm grabbing for. My drug of choice might just be, it might just be a book, right? Or it might just be a magazine, or it might just be a conversation with a friend, or it might just be like picking up my phone to scroll. It's permissible. That's not the issue. It's that I'm feeling this void, this pain, this sensation that I'm feeling it with something other than Hashem. And through that pause, I'm actually creating room for Hashem to enter my life and be with me as I witness my sensations. Really, you as the godly soul are being the therapist. So the animal soul, you are just being present and being the witnesser, and we cannot underestimate how incredibly powerful that is. So when a person sanctifies himself to a small extent below, right, just that moment of pause, he'll be sanctified a great deal above Talmud Yoma. Okay, that is making a godly moment. Hashem, right? We are sanctifying ourselves. Sanctification means separating. I'm separating between myself, who I truly am, and this impulse. I'm no longer acting on the impulse, and therefore I no longer am that impulse. Right? I'm makadashing myself, I'm sanctifying myself, and therefore Hashem is going to sanctify me. The result of God's holiness ascending and high from your delayed gratification, right? We're giving God glory by that pause. What's the benefit? Is that supernal holiness is drawn down from this abundant source down to you below to provide you with a plentiful and powerful assistance in your worship of God. Now Hashem is going to actually help us going forward. When we take that moment of pause, God sanctifies us. God helps us, and it says with powerful assistance. So the first part is just the starting point is I'm a pleasure junkie, going from one permitted pleasure to the next, right? Just trying not to feel these sensations, which actually once we feel them, we realize almost immediately we're not going to die from feeling them. It's running from them that makes them so intense. Okay? So the second thing that happens is not that I become sober, but I learn to create a pause. Not like I no longer want this thing or no longer feel the impulse. I'm just creating a pause. And the third step is that these moments of pause allow me a moment of sanctity. I'm drawing holiness upon myself in these moments. These moments accumulated are having a tremendous effect on me. So what exactly is this divine assistance that I receive through doing Hiskafia? Is that I will be helped little by little to rid the Sitra Achra from my heart. It's actually going to get easier. This impulse is actually going to soften. Meaning the sway that worldly pleasures have on me will be minimized, giving me greater freedom to make higher decisions without the constant addictions to the next pleasure. If all I can think about is the next pleasure, and all I can do is the impulse reaction to go to the next pleasure, I don't have the full gamut to really be me. I'm not really free. I'm just going from one pleasure to the next. By sanctifying myself, I actually have all this more, through that pause, I actually have much more space in my life to respond versus react. So Hiskafia in real time creates neuroplasticity, meaning we're not saying never indulge, never go eat that cookie. No, that's not what we're saying at all. We're not saying never go scroll on your phone. Those things are permitted. We don't really have the right to say never go and do those things. That's not what we're saying at all. We're saying when I pause and I don't eat that cookie out of my anxiety, and I don't go and scroll on my phone out of my anxiety, I pause. I become present to my sensations. I notice them. I don't try to heal them and I don't try to fix them. I just notice them. Then what happens is I, after about 30 times, create a new pathway, a new option where now I'm like, oh, I could just go indulge in that thing, or I can pause. And that actually becomes more available to me. And each time it's becoming easier and easier. There's now, like, literally, it's like you always walk the same path to school, let's say. And one day you say could take a different path. So the next day you're like, oh, I have two paths I could go down. And the more you take the second path, the more that's going to become the more natural path. And so God gave us this gift of our brains being like silly putty. We actually can affect our destiny. We have neuroplasticity. We do not need to walk the same path we've walked since we were a little kid. We have the ability to choose. So one is I feel the compulsion to scroll on my phone. Two, I pause and delay that instant pleasure, and therefore I'm sanctifying myself and I'm crushing that Sitra Achra. And the third step is next time I have the same desire to scroll, I will have more space and freedom to make the same decision. With this gift above, it'll become easier, meaning I can choose that pause again. And with this gift from above that Hashem's giving us, and through the gift of neuroplasticity, it's going to become easier and easier to be able to have this control. And so the Tanya is not telling us, go deny yourself for fun. Get a kick out of it. It'll give God pleasure. No, that sounds cruel, right? Like, go deny yourself so God can have pleasure. Sure. Like, that's going to slide with our generation. Yeah, it's not happening. No, this is for my greatest freedom. I'm not denying myself anything. When I act as an impulse, I'm a servant to my impulse. I don't even really exist. For me to have true human freedom, for me to be the freest, happiest, realest person, most authentic me that I can be, I need to have this pause so that when I'm choosing something, it's really coming from me, not from this impulse running me. Thank you so much for taking the time to discover this topic together. In terms of resources, there is a book. I have it so close, I'll just grab it. It's called The 60-Second Fix, and it's about self-regulation. It's for parents and for children, and it has a fantastic technique about self-regulation. And really what we're talking about is Hiskafia, self-regulation. It's the ability to calm the sensations enough, to be present enough, or at least present enough through the sensations, that I have that pause, and then I can choose to engage in the world from a different place. So there's this book, there's many self-regulation techniques online, there's many fantastic resources for somatic experiencing, and this is all to build our Hiskafia muscle. Thanks for taking the time.